Now, before this video starts, I want to make this specifically clear that I'm not condoning any of the actions mentioned in the video I'm about to react to. This video follows all of YouTube's TOS, especially in regards to their child safety policy. But anyways, with that out of the way, let's get into this video. Hello everybody, it is Sharker here, and today I'm going to be talking about a person named Starry Milk. Now this person has posted a video 9 days ago with the title, NSFW is not problematic, y'all are just sensitive, video essay x speed paint. Now for some context, this person has been posting regularly on their community posts for quite some time, and have now only started to post in video form 9 days ago. And if you didn't know now, of course there's going to be a community post up of her essentially justifying Mushroom Girl's actions in relation to pro-shipping. Yeah, the same Mushroom Girl who made 4 videos on me mocking my religion and misconstruing all my points. But anyways, with that out of the way, let's react to this video.
Now, what do I think of R34? Well, you can probably indicate what I think of it via the title. I think NSFW is completely okay to draw and to post as long as it follows the basic rules of being properly labeled and restricted.
Yeah, I agree with this point so far, although if it were up to me, I would have all this content completely taken down or removed, because at the end of the day, there has been multiple studies conducted on this from various different organizations that have shown that pornography has damaging effects to the mind, even when it's an adult. Or even when it is consumed in quote-unquote moderate amounts. It's the literal equivalent of saying something harmful to you in moderation is somehow good for you, which it is not.
You'll also need to follow the guidelines of specific apps.
Fallacy number 1, you just made an appeal to authority statement. Because, at the end of the day, a website's rules doesn't dictate what's right or wrong. She could make the same argument with different websites but the other way around. Oh, this website allows this, therefore it's not wrong for me to post that. At the end of the day, a website doesn't automatically dictate what is right or wrong. And until you can provide me with an objective moral view which states what is right or wrong objectively, then whatever you say here is null and void.
But for an app like X, it's okay as long as you follow the rules I've listed before, along with the app's additional rules that you can read in the guidelines.
I'm gonna say this once more. How does adherence to a website's prescribed regulations determine what is right or wrong?
But there are some people who think that R34 should be banned or at least deemed problematic. Why, you may ask? Well, I have gathered some arguments I've seen people discuss, and I'll be debunking them in this video.
Minors can access the suggestive material, harming them in the long run.
This is something I see people argue a lot, but when you switch up this argument to any other topic, it quickly becomes extremely discreditable. Any horror movie fans out there? Horror movies can be found on plenty of streaming apps. A child can easily stumble upon a gory movie and watch it.
Firstly, we have to establish this. NSFW is made for one purpose and one purpose only, which is arousal, which eventually leads to pornography consumption. So when she's saying NSFW artwork, she's really referring to pornography consumption. But anyways, with that out of the way, pornography is designed to trigger arousal, which can lead to addiction because it hijacks the brain's reward system with repetitive dopamine spikes. Now these dopamine spikes are similar to when somebody smokes a cigarette or when somebody smokes, essentially meaning that they're almost always bound to get addicted to said thing when they indulge in it, aka meaning that it's almost always an addiction. So now that we've essentially established that in almost every single case it will lead to an addiction, now we can start by listing off all the negatives that come with it. Addiction almost always causes anxiety and depression because it makes everyday activities feel null because you aren't getting those big dopamine spikes. It can also cause physical issues such as erectile dysfunction. And now she's somehow trying to compare that to watching a horror movie, something that isn't even remotely connected to this in any way, shape, or form. Comparing them ignores these fundamental differences and makes no logical sense.
Is this the director's fault for even making the movie in the first place? Is this the streaming app's fault for putting the movie out there? Or is it perhaps the child's fault? No, it's none of those. Their guardian is responsible for what their children may stumble upon, and most likely, the people who have made that argument would agree with me there.
I think you know that it's incredibly unrealistic for parents to essentially police restrict their child from the internet for not only most of their childhood but into their teenage years. That is beyond stupid to expect parents to do that. And, at the end of the day, yes, I do think it's the fault of the people creating said content because they are knowingly creating this with the fact that it will provide nothing but a net negative to society, damage people's brains essentially, and lead them down a dark path of anxiety and depression. So yes, I do think it's the fault of the producers.
Okay, let's take this even further and age up the minor. A 13-year-old, old enough to understand the internet and have unrestricted access, finds an account on Twitter that posts R34 with the proper warnings. The kid, despite their better judgment, views this account anyways. That will unfortunately be the teen's fault.
This is such an idiotic argument because it already assumes that the teenager has some sort of knowledge on said subject, meaning that he has already viewed the subject material for him to understand what he's getting himself into. Not even to mention that most teenagers, especially at the age of 13, don't know the side effects of pornography use. So using language to describe said 13-year-old as some sort of logical and calculated being is completely and utterly dishonest.
Not the original posters. They were old enough to understand that the content is not for them, and they click on it anyway.
Because they are curious? You do realize that most of these restrictions don't do anything except make them want to see it even more. Do you honestly think that the Are You 18 button on any single website in history has ever discouraged a minor from viewing said content? That never works. Do you want to know an actual restriction? Making the person show their ID. That's like you going up to a party and then them asking you, are you over 18? And if you say yes, no matter what age you actually are, they just let you in. That's why they actually verify who you are by using your ID. Humans, especially when they're young, are curious by nature. So expecting them to make a calculated decision based on one single pop-up asking them what your age is completely and utterly stupid.
Now, I'm not saying that you have to follow the suggested age range, and if you didn't, then you're a bad person. That's definitely not what I'm trying to imply. But it's the teenagers who complain about the content even though they were warned about it that pisses me off.
And somehow you are not pissed off by the creators who are openly creating something that is a net negative to society and use the lamest excuse for a restriction that almost always never works?
If you are told to be too young to properly grasp the labeled content and still not only actively interact with said content, but also complain about it, then I'm sorry, but you would be at fault.
They actively interact with said content. It's almost like that they are addicted to said content because they viewed it.
Artists are not required to bend to your needs. It's just that simple. This way of thinking is not only taking away freedom of expression.
Just letting you know, there is no such thing as freedom of expression, at least not in its fullest form. If you have the ability to fully express yourself in any way you want, you could literally walk outside completely nude and it wouldn't be anybody's place to judge or even arrest you for that circumstance because it's your freedom of expression. Because after all, you're just expressing yourself. So no, there is no such thing as freedom of expression, neither is there freedom of speech. Or at least not 100%.
If you clump all the arguments together in this one video, you can obviously see that the hate manifests from a personal disgust other than real concerns of harm.
By all accounts, that is a unsubstantiated claim. You personally went off of your anecdotes of what you quote-unquote personally heard, which could be literally made up. What would be more credible is if you actually showed a comment or a Reddit post or literally anything for that example of somebody actually saying this, but for some reason, you don't.
The one argument that had a real concern is shown to have very little thought put behind it, considering how easy someone can debunk their logic by simply replacing the setting.
So essentially all she did in this video was present a few arguments that she claimed she heard from the audience, even though it's most likely that she made them up, and then drew conclusions that the arguments against NSFW were weak solely based on the arguments that she was likely fabricating. Not even to mention majority of the points in her video were absolutely horrible and could be debunked very simply. But anyways, this was the end of today's video. I thoroughly deconstructed and debunked it. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, subscribe, like, leave a comment below on what you thought about the video. Join my Discord server if you want, and yeah, I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.